Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Nick from ForexStreams.com with the daily analysis. Today is Tuesday, the 9th of June, 2020. Time is 10:01 here in the UK. You're looking at a Forex factory calendar. Today's analysis, we're going to be looking for price action setups across all the pairs listed to the right here. We're going to be discussing some of the setups I shared yesterday to the forum. And yeah, we're just going to be doing all the stuff we normally do. Where is the chat? I can't see the chat. I haven't hovered it, that's why. There we go. Hey Colin, Laurentio, Ty, Chris, Olu, Dan. How you guys doing? Let's just dive right in. Wow, what a quiet news week. Today is the only day where there's stuff happening. Or tomorrow, rather, is the only day where there's stuff happening. So yeah, not much point in talking about any of this because this is all going to be after tomorrow's webinar. So we'll talk about this tomorrow. Let's get started with the analysis in that case. Right. EURCAD. Anyone in this one? I shared this to the forum yesterday. It's not a bad setup. It's just unfortunate that it hasn't dropped down further. So the risk to reward ratio just is not good. But it's been giving us some pretty clean bounces in this range. So it's an obvious setup. Just my biggest problem with it is that, it's best traded on the 8 hour anyway. Is that depending on the time frame you enter, my biggest problem with it is that the risk to reward ratio isn't great, because when I was looking at this earlier, I was asking myself, where do I want my stop loss here? And I was really apprehensive about entering with a stop loss less than these lows here. So I'll just walk you through the process of what I was thinking with this one, because I think that could be helpful to some of you guys. I was looking at this on the 6 hour, the 8 hour, and the 12 hour. So the time frame isn't a huge issue. I was looking at it on all these time frames and I was thinking, all right, I want to get in on this, but I need my stop loss, or at least I want my stop loss to be below this. Now, if I get my stop loss below this and I put my entry up here, my risk to reward ratio is 2R once we hit this point at which price has stalled already 3 times. All right, fair enough. That looks good. I'm kind of happy with that. What I'm not happy with is this hair trigger entry here. Entering as soon as that breaks, not that great. So 15061. Yeah, it's a really tight stop loss, man. So yeah, where was I? I can't remember what I got to. Yeah, now I remember. So the hair trigger entry, it's pretty much a hair trigger entry because you're entering as soon as this like little 8 hour candle breaks, or this little 6 hour candle, which is pretty much the same. The 12 hour candle, if we were trading based on this, our entry would be further up here, but that would be an atrocious entry. I'm going to do this because I don't normally do this, and then you guys can tell me if it's helpful. I'm just going to lay out the process I went through with this setup. The thinking process. So on the 12 hour chart, I'll just delete this one and redraw it to not make it confusing. On the 12 hour chart, I'd be using this candle, right? So my entry on the 12-hour chart would be based on the high of this candle. So my entry would be roughly there. Doesn't have to be perfect. But my stop loss, I'd still want it below those lows. So 12-hour chart wise, we got a 1.32 risk to reward ratio, which is just horrible. And I would never take a trade with such a horrible risk to reward ratio. Even if we moved our target up here, hoping for a spike beyond this, this resistance area that it's been bouncing from, even then, it's only 1.56. It's just not really worth it. It's not worth the risk. Trading lower timeframes, the key to being successful, in my opinion, is having a good risk to reward ratio. So you want to get at the minimum 2R, but you know, if you can pull off 2.5, even better. So 12-hour just completely off the table. Doesn't make sense. So then we go down to the 8-hour, but then we got that other problem I discussed, which is the hair trigger entry. You're entering based on just price just like pushing above it for a second. And on top of that, I was out for a run when I was doing all this thinking. Well, I wasn't actually running while I was thinking. I'd gone out to start my run. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to take a quick look. And I took a quick look and I saw this, and then all this thinking process started happening. So 12-hour got thrown off the table. 8-hour looked good. 6-hour looked good. Despite the hair trigger entry, it seemed kind of worth it. But the thing with those hair trigger entries is they get you into trouble a whole lot of the times that you use them. And depending on market conditions, these hair trigger entries just really aren't worth it. But at the moment, we are again moving towards, if you look at the daily charts, we're moving towards some pretty big daily movements again. So we had Corona-fueled, COVID-19 lockdown-fueled markets here, which were crazy. Then we had a kind of, well, EURCAD's not a great example of this, to be honest. We had kind of a slowdown where there was like days of very tight ranging and tight volatility, and now we're starting to see trends again. So hair trigger entries aren't good in a lot of conditions, but you know, I figured, screw it, I'll just use the hair trigger entry. And I jumped in this one here, but I'm still like a little bit, part of me is still in doubt as to whether I should have used the hair trigger entry. But at that point, at this point I'm in, so I may as well just keep it. It's not like I'm going to take back a trade I've jumped in because I'm not happy with the entry. It's just a little niggling thing. It's just a psychology thing, really. Most times I'm in my trades and I'm just like, whatever, I've taken the trade. But sometimes I'm in my trades and I have like a little thing in the back of my mind that says, you probably shouldn't have done that. And maybe you did that just because you wanted to be in the trade. But, you know, no one's perfect and you can't be 100% on top of your trading psychology at all times. So I jumped in the trade and it's not like I'm unhappy about it. It's just the hair trigger entry probably could lead to some trouble here. Now, you guys, a lot of you guys seem to be in this with a pretty horrible stop loss. So we got Olu, who's in it with 15061, which let's just use another tool. Imagining the entry is roughly the same as mine. This isn't my exact entry. I haven't got the exact entry, but it's roughly here on a break of that candle. I'll get my exact entry in a second. I just need to look at my. Actually, no, your entry, your stop loss is decent. So Olu, your stop loss is, it's not horrible, but it is above those lows. Matt, your stop loss is more in line with mine. Your stop loss is good, in my opinion. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the daily, man. Regardless of whether it's the daily or the 8 hour, you're ignoring the fact that price has easily met these lows. I mean, an ideal stop loss would be a fair way below these lows, like here, but obviously that's going to give you a horrible risk to reward ratio. So just a minimum stop loss rules to try and get it below some recent lows, and those are recent lows. They're even more recent on the daily than they are on the 8 hour in terms of the amount of candles. So if you're trading it off the 8 hour, your stop loss should be wider, if anything, than on the 8 hour. 8 hours usually tighter stop losses. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Those lows exist on the daily just as they exist on the 8 hour. I'm not sure why you keep saying that, but these are going to the daily. And I know you know this, but I'm just trying to make a point. Going to the daily doesn't delete these lows. They still exist on the daily. They exist on the weekly. They exist on the monthly. They exist on the minute charts. Lows are lows, and they should be respected when you're placing your stop losses, in my opinion. So get it below those lows. It's too late now. You're in the trade. I'm just saying that's how I would have handled it. That's how I did handle it. I got it below those lows. But if I were you and I was looking at it, that's what I would have done. I would have placed it below the lows. Now, I shared this to the forum yesterday in the watch list section. Unfortunately, I was unable to share it to the live trade section because this all happened when I was going for a run. So what do I think of the TP? Yeah, that's pretty much where my TP is. It's all good. It's a good target. It's where price has reached several times. Having your target beyond here is not necessarily bad because you're relying on, because price has been proven to go up there, but you're relying more on those spikes. It's a lot safer to have it around about down here, 1.53. Anyway. I don't know if that's helpful to you guys. That's just the thinking process I went through. If it's useful, I'll do it more often. If it's not useful, then I won't waste 14 minutes of everyone's time with it. But yeah, the trade's going quite well right now. So I would say just hold on. Be mindful of this resistance here at 1.5313. Also, just a quick tip, how I usually handle things. I think my target's a bit high. I'll get my exact numbers in here because I deleted the tool earlier. One thing that I haven't done yet, but that I usually would do is, as price is moving up quite quickly right now, just throw up a alarm here. Now, this isn't an exact price. I just eyeball this. I just put it before my target, right? And how many pips before my target? I don't know. I just eyeball it. This is a fair bit of warning before my target. It's unlikely that price is going to hit this alarm and then within 10 seconds be at my target unless it's moving really, really, really quickly. But hey, if you want to be safer, just drop it down here. I just find if you put it too low, then you're going to get alerted 2 hours before it even hits your target, which isn't always what you want. So I'm just going to throw it around here. And what this is going to do for me is just alert me when price is there. So let's say in the next 2 hours, price hits this alarm. Now, it will have moved so quickly to hit that in 2 hours that I'd be thinking, I don't want to get out at this point because price has moved too fast. There's a lot of momentum behind this move. This one could be big enough to break out from this resistance area and go all the way up to this more major resistance area. It could be the start of a new trend. It could be anything. It's just I don't want to get out right away. So what I would do in that case would be adjust my stop loss, probably move it to break even, maybe even move it to like 0.5R and then extend my target out. So just set junior. I tend, it just depends how busy I am. These days I'm doing a lot of other stuff and I don't tend to look at my trades that much, but that's why I use chart alarms, especially if you're on a PC when you're trading. But even if you're on a laptop, as long as it's not a tablet or a phone, you can do a lot of the stuff via chart alarms. If you're on a phone, you can still get chart alarms, but it's a bit harder to do it all. But yeah, I just use my alarms, really. I don't need to monitor this because I know that when it gets close to my target, my alarm will ring. And I could also, if I want to, place an alarm down here that when price starts dipping below my entry and starts getting towards my stop loss, my alarm will ring. And that way I'll know that I can safely leave this trade unmonitored because my alarms are going to alert me. And, you know, let's say the alarm fails. For whatever reason, let's say the alarm fails. I still have my stop loss in place and I still have my exit in place. So it's not like I'm... Worst case scenario, the trade hits the pre-planned stop loss, which is fine by me, or hits the pre-planned target, which is fine by me, even if, you know, maybe I would have extended it if the alarm didn't fail. Whatever. That's life. But, I mean, I can't think of a situation where an alarm has failed, unless it's me that's failed on the setting up of the alarm. Or, you know, keeping my speakers or headset on or whatever. Anyway. I think that wraps up everything for this specific trade. I don't think there's anything left to discuss about this one, except for actually Olu. Yeah, that's a trap that a lot of traders fall into. You're like, oh, I want a better risk to reward ratio, so I'm going to make my stop loss tighter. And you can get like an amazing risk to reward ratio if you put your stop loss this tight. Look, I have a 13.45 risk reward ratio. That's insane. But you're going to have a whole lot more losses like that. Having a safe stop, the wider your stop, the safer it is. I always think about it that way. If my stop is down here, it probably won't be hit in the next 10 years. So that's a pretty safe stop. A stop that's not going to be hit for 10 years. Or maybe for my lifetime it might not be hit. Pretty safe stop. But obviously that's not a viable stop loss. But when you think about it that way, that the wider your stop, the safer the trade, or the safer the stop is from being hit. When you think about it that way, you start to place better stops. Stop goes before risk to reward ratio. Before you even think about your risk to reward ratio, you say, where does my stop need to go for this trade to be safe? So the minimum possible stop loss in my mind is below these lows. Minimum possible stop loss. And from there, I figure out the rest of my trade. From there, I figure out where my target's going to go. And then I see, okay, is this risk to reward ratio good, or is my minimum stop loss making it so that the risk to reward ratio is not viable? And if that's the case, then either abandon trade or use a different entry methodology, you know, enter on a retrace or something like that. So yeah, anyway, I guess that's enough on this trade. Let's keep going. New Zealand, there it is. Oh, nice. That was a nice short, man. Wait, just this morning? I thought you were talking about from here. I immediately assumed you were talking about this short from the daily. But if you're saying this morning, or this afternoon rather, I imagine you're probably doing a smaller time frame. I very often close early, Junior. Right, GBPUSD. Now, I also shared this yesterday. Didn't look quite like this when I shared it. I was hoping that it would play out a little bit differently. That being said, the setup is kind of turning into what I wanted it to be, sort of. The risk to reward ratio isn't fantastic. The entry, you could have already been in this trade. If you really want to, you could enter right now, really, because it has broken the low of the indecision candle and now it is pulling back. It's a bit risky though. It's a bit risky to do that. What I'm personally thinking with this one is to do something roughly like this. Now, why am I placing the entry here? Well, first of all, this isn't the exact entry. This is just like a rough estimate that I have for now. But I'm just trying to bring up something that's, there we go. First of all, the dashboard tool that I made for you guys, that says your entry should be around about 21 pips below the low, the safest entry. It doesn't mean that you have to enter like this. This is just a safe entry. Is 21 pips below the low of the indecision candle. So you take the indecision candle and you add around 21 pips, which makes the entry actually just a little bit tighter than it is here. Or no, wait, did I just read that wrong? What the hell? Sorry guys, my charts are being weird. All right, I'm just gonna refresh. Save, refresh. All right. Okay, yeah, now they're moving, okay. Right, sorry about that. So from here to here is 36 pips, so. Yeah, around about there. So that would be a pretty decent entry around about here. I decided to make it a bit wider though, to be honest. That's the minimum safe entry. Why not go a bit wider when you can? Stop loss. Now, see, this is where it gets tricky because I really hate it when I'm entering a trade. I want to enter a trade, but the current daily candle makes a new high beyond the previous ones. Because it's a real good indication that your stop loss really isn't that safe. So my minimum stop loss is going to be above the high of this indecision candle, but I'm going to pull it out a bit further. something like that. But you can already tell just from the sound of my voice that I don't really feel that comfortable with this setup. And I'm probably not going to take it in the end. But this is something roughly what the trade would look like. Something like this. But it's just, yesterday's candle pushed up a whole lot further than the previous two bounces. Honestly, I'm not really overall liking this, but the setup is technically viable. And there's always that distinction between technically viable and actually wanting to enter the trade. So it's a bit of a risky one. And there's always the other risk is when price pushes too far above resistance, then resistance could become support. So it could be a case of a continuation like that. But I wouldn't trade it as a continuation because I like my continuations to pull well beyond the resistance area, then come back. You know, it's a lot safer when that happens because we don't really know if resistance is support in this case or, you know, whatever's happening here. It's hard to know for sure until we get some movement in either direction. So this one is viable, although it is risky. It's a day trade from open. That makes sense. Okay, cool. And yeah, it could be. Could be. So yeah, there's a viable setup, guys, but I wouldn't jump in. I wouldn't jump in too early. If you're gonna get in, try to get in at least at around about 12596. But as you can tell, I'm not too interested in this setup. Anyway, moving on. What's going on here? Righto. Anyone short on AUDUSD? It looks like this uptrend might be ending. Might be. It's a bit of a weird one here to get in short on. But if you look at the right time frame, which I can't really find right now because I'm not even sure if it exists. But why is this hidden behind my taskbar? Maybe if we do this. Yeah, okay. So I'm not going to trade from the 4-day time frame. It's just sometimes when I'm showing you guys setups in a webinar, it's helpful to go to some of these weird time frames just to show the price action that's happening here. So when you're looking at it on the daily, it looks like this. But when you compress these candles together, it ends up looking more like your classic indecision candle, what some people call pin bars or dojis or whatever they call them. I'm not up with all the candle names. I just call them indecision. When you go to the right time frame, it does look like a pretty solid indecision candle forming on resistance. So I'm not going to trade it from the 4-day because that's not really a viable time frame to trade. But I'm just switching to there to show you guys what's going on here. So what we have here is indecision in this area. It just doesn't exactly look like the normal indecision we would trade. Now, why do I have this area here? Well, it seems to me like there's resistance at both these points for AUDUSD. So sometimes you get resistance pretty closely packed together, and you don't just pretend it's not there because it's not convenient to you. I just place it anyway. So I've placed it, got two resistance areas. So what are the options here with AUDUSD? This is going to be a long webinar. We haven't even started going through the list of potentials, which I'm going to strike all these off, to be honest, because So that has an atrocious risk to reward ratio. Not really that viable. Probably not even worth discussing this, to be honest. But if I had to enter, I'd probably do something like that, or maybe something like this. But yeah, it's just not viable regardless. The other side of this is you could have entered on a small time frame, but that's obviously too late. If you wanted to do that, you should have been in quite a while ago. But you know, the risk with that is you've entered on a smaller time frame, now it's hitting support, and you're basically trying to junior enter on a small time frame. You enter on the 4 hour. So yeah, I was saying the problem with that is you've basically shorted straight into a support area, and right now it's actually bouncing from your support area. Now hopefully it continues down, but it is bouncing from your support area. So I'm not sure what your target is like, but if you entered on the 4 hour, I imagine that price has pretty much hit your target already. So you should be out or have the possibility to get out, or have your stop loss at break even or something. So it shouldn't be too bad, but just keep in mind that this is support. Right, so there's nothing actually happening on AUDUSD. I'm just gonna quickly organize this list by alphabet and then just go through the rest of the setups. And why is this green? This should be orange. All right, let's go. AUDJPY, this one's turning around. I shared this last week. Just didn't end up being viable for me personally. Just the indecision candle was a bit too big. So yeah, scraps that one completely. AUD New Zealand, this looks kind of interesting right now. It's stalling out heavily on this support area. We could get a bounce from here, potentially a long trade. Maybe, maybe not. Let's just see how it goes. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Worth keeping an eye on for sure. AUDUSD we discussed. CAD CHF. I'm not actually trading that pair right now. Nor am I trading CAD JPY. I just have them up there for as I was using them to build the dashboard tool I showed. Nah, can't do anything there. I'm just going to keep an eye on this, but it looks like we have some sort of range here on EURGBP. I'm not going to take a long here, but if it does approach to the top of this range, I will look for a short here. Now, since this is a smaller time frame, I'm just going to throw an alarm up here. That way I can get alerted when it hits the top of this range. I'll definitely be looking for a short from the top of the range. Need to adjust some support resistance areas, I believe, on EURGBP. I know some of you are short here from yesterday. Seems to be going quite well for you guys. Nice. Euro New Zealand's hit support and is turning around. I'll mark this as green on EURJPY. I'm not in it, but just so we can keep track of it. GBP is another pair I'm not trading at the moment. GBPJPY is reversing, but GBP New Zealand is a pair I'm not really trading, but let's just take a look at it anyway. There's nothing to trade here, but it is bouncing from the support area right now. Might be worth looking at tomorrow or the next day. New Zealand JPY is interesting. I'm wondering what's going to happen with these JPY pairs. They are pulling back quite a bit. We're starting to see some strength from the JPY. Is that going to continue? Who knows? Be interesting if it has a bit of a continuation here. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I want to see what JPY does today. If it starts to stop around here, there could be potential for a long. It could be just like a temporary bit of strength before the weakness sets back in and it keeps moving up. Maybe, maybe not. Just something I want to keep an eye on. New Zealand USD, similar scenario actually. It's not that great in terms of support. I can't really find a good support area to place here. I guess that's the best, but it's more like a minor area. So I'm actually just going to place it as a green line. It's not really a major area. Anyway, that's not that important. What I'm looking at here is a potential for a continuation, like we just talked about in New Zealand JPY. Price drops back down to support, continues up potentially. It's not there yet, so let's not get too excited over this. Just worth keeping an eye on. USDCAD. What was this? I think that was just an example or something. Price, we're getting that USD strength, just like we're getting JPY strength. Last week was all about JPY and USD weakness. This week, we're starting to see a turn in that. We're starting to see some JPY and USD strength. Now, is that going to last? That is the question. Or are we going to go back to that weakness? So once it hits this resistance area, that will be a pretty good, we'll get a pretty good idea of whether this strength is here to stay and if we're going to get a turnaround, or if it's just going to stall out here and then continue down. So there's potential for a continuation from this resistance area. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Short continuation. USDCHF, now this one's actually not showing any strength. This one's just pushing down. I don't really see a valid setup here. USDJPY, I don't see much here. Maybe if it hits this support area, but it's not that interesting. And yeah, I mean, that's it, guys, for the analysis. Not much going on. Well, actually, that's not true. There is a fair bit going on. Aside from an open trade, which is going quite well. But, you know, last few weeks, trades have been going very, very, very well. And then they just turn around and move back to the entry. So don't get too excited about this trade. But yeah, EURCAD's going quite well. Then we got some potential setups on the rest of these pairs, starting with GBPUSD. Let's do a summary. GBPUSD, I'm not excited about this one. It's one that I shared yesterday. It looked a lot better when I shared it initially yesterday, and now it's just not looking that great. There's a few potential issues here. First of all, this resistance area might have become support. Price might have moved high enough above it that it's going to do something more like that, or even just not necessarily do a continuation, more just like something like this is completely possible, where it just like treats this as support and then just gets stuck on it for a few weeks. I'm just not sure if it's actually going to turn around here, or if now there's a bunch of buy orders here. So it's a bit of a risky one, but it's there as a potential trade, guys. So it's a viable setup, just a risky one. AUD New Zealand stalling out on support. This one's probably not going to happen today, but maybe if you go on the 12-hour or the 8-hour, you might see a viable setup, but not really. Now, I'd probably... you could, depending on how this current 8-hour candle closes. Let's say it closes exactly like this. You could make a case for a long trade if it were to push up beyond this candle, because it is showing signs of stalling out here. It's viable on the 8-hour, depending on how it closes. If it closes roughly how it is now, so it's going to close in 3 hours 20 minutes. So we'll just see what happens. EURGBP, this one's giving us a nice little turnaround from this minor support area right now. So if it hits this resistance area up here, I'll definitely be looking for a short trade. New Zealand JPY, this one, along with New Zealand USD, similar-ish setups, except New Zealand JPY is already at support. They're just potential continuations. Just want to see if New Zealand stalls at the current, roughly the current support it's sitting at on New Zealand USD and New Zealand JPY. And USDCAD, we're just looking to see if it stalls once it hits this resistance area, stops and pushes down. So we're just seeing if the weakness returns to the US dollar. And why am I chance doing this again? Oh, okay. No, they're okay right now. Yeah, that wraps it up for the analysis, guys. Are there any questions, or shall we end this session? I don't really have specific rules that I could easily share. What would be better would be to do a webinar on exiting early, a members only webinar, and cover it in there. That would make more sense. It's not something I can just like, share at the end of one of these webinars. There's too many factors when it comes to exiting trades early. But there are videos on the course about exiting trades early in the risk management section. Right, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys very much for attending. I'll see you for tomorrow's analysis, which is going to be at the same time of 10 a.m. Just keep an eye on all these setups I shared, and also for the lower time frames, I'll be sharing potential setups to the chat room. Thank you guys very much for attending, and I'll see you for tomorrow's analysis and also on the forum. Bye.